Thank you, and thanks for joining this late in the afternoon. My name is Dan Gordon. We're going to talk about reinventing your pipeline with GitLab, Kubernetes, and Amazon EKS. I don't know who was here at the last talk. We talked about the back end and the infrastructure supporting autonomous vehicles. It was a pretty cool talk. And there's a part of that that picks up where we pick up, which is all of that is software development. So there's a lot of hardware and there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but the software has to be developed, the training has to be done, and that's where GitLab comes in. And that's where the pipelines come in. So, there we go. My name's Dan Gordon. I'm Manager of Technical Marketing here at GitLab. There's a few contact details. I've been automating things, all the things, since around Sun Microsystems days. So I've been focused on DevOps pretty much since it started. Really, really love what it does, what it talks about. And GitLab is really focused on a lot of the same ideas. GitLab has a belief that everyone can contribute. And by that, we mean in the digital age, for software, that everyone should be able to contribute, not just the developers, but everyone else involved as well as part of the process. And we believe that software is how companies are defining themselves and differentiating themselves. It's how companies are going to win. It's also how they're going to lose. I think everybody here gets that. That's why you're here. Software companies will change the world, but there's some challenges in order to make that happen. So for 10 years plus, we've been trying to get to DevOps. Everyone understood, OK, getting to DevOps means tight iteration or short iterations, quick cycles, testing, validation, getting information back from your customers, delivering fluidly, everyone with a single goal, single culture towards delivering value to customers. Well, that's great. And a lot of companies tried to get there. And the challenges that they ran into are that they started with a lot of their tools. And they said, OK, let's put them together. So analyst studies have shown that close to 80% of the companies that embarked on a DevOps transformation journey are unsatisfied with the results that they got. And we believe in talking to thousands of customers that we do that are using our product that a big part of that is because of this, what you're seeing here, which is lots of point tools sewn together. It can provide a solution, but it also means that you have what's going on the bottom, which is you have lots of cross integrations, lots of versions that you have to maintain and keep going. And chaining these tools together comes at the cost of integration complexity. So it's harder to change any tool. It's harder to troubleshoot. You have to deal with multiple vendors and licenses, et cetera. There's another piece of this, though, which is that DevOps is about bringing everyone together culturally, working towards a single goal, absolving the silos between all the teams working on software delivery. And actually having a tool chain like this actually reinforces the silos, if you think about it, because the people who are working in ops, if they can stay in their ops tool, and the devs can stay in their dev tool, and the QAs can stay in their QA tool, even if we put lines of data between those and call that an integration, they don't have the same shared transparency across the board when they're working on problems and projects. So we call this the toolchain tax. Time and cost to acquire point tools, time and cost to integrate those point tools. There's obviously time and cost to train all of the users on those different point tools, even if it's just the part that they need. It's harder to troubleshoot and optimize. The users themselves have context switching as they move between tools. And there's more time and cost to administer and to purchase and to manage these tools as well. So the inefficiency that comes from this are challenges in collaboration across the teams, scattered governance. We have different sources, single sources of truth that we try and bring together. And with this, it's hard to get the full advantage of DevOps. So what GitLab does is provide a complete DevOps platform as a single application. And we're almost done with the marketing slides, so we can show you some product. But the idea is to give enough that customers can get the value that they need out of the software delivery process, accelerating the development process and the delivery process and the management afterwards process. GitLab provides one user experience, one software to maintain, one data store, one license, one single source of truth out of the box. You can imagine what that can do from an auditability and reporting standpoint, and from a user experience perspective as well. Of course, it doesn't mean that we don't play well with others. We integrate beautifully with the popular tools such as Jira and Jenkins and GitHub, and of course with the cloud providers such as AWS, Amazon EKS, to give a one-stop instant software factory. So many of our customers will tell you that GitLab is the best way to get your organization practicing DevOps software delivery at scale. This is just a few of them that we like to put up that have given us their permission. GitLab's used by over 100,000 organizations across the whole DevOps lifecycle. And here's just a few examples. Last slide, promise. Customers such as Ticketmaster, who achieved 15 times faster builds. Goldman Sachs, who spoke here as well and mentioned us, who found such rapid adoption beyond what they expected that, and value in GitLab that they actually are now an investor in the company. Even the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, who fosters projects like Kubernetes and Prometheus and Core DNS, are using GitLab. So you can read about this at that website, on our website. There's a lot more as well. And so back to this. This is what we're going to look at together. We call it Auto DevOps. It's really just a feature. It's a best practice out-of-the-box pipeline that has all of the tools built in. You can take GitLab and you can create any pipeline you want. You can use pieces of our pipeline. You can start with ours and add your own. But we wanted to start where somebody who installs GitLab can sit down, put their code in the repository, and have it come out on the other end, tested, validated, secured, in production, and monitored. And so that's what we're going to take a look at here. With that, we'll switch to the demo. OK. Did that work? Yes. OK, so what we're looking at GitLab. We are in a project. And what we're going to do is play the role of a developer who's using GitLab to make a change. It's a simple thing. It's not really about the demo app. It's about the product. And the first thing I'll go into, because we're here at Reinvent, is just a little bit on how do you use Kubernetes? How do you bring Kubernetes into this? And so that's really simple to do, simplified here. Either as a project administrator, or as a group administrator, or as an administrator of the entire instance, I can come down to operations and go to Kubernetes. And we can see there's a lot of other things there as well. And I've got a couple clusters here that actually I've got one at a higher group level that is available to me. And I've got one at the next level down, which is where my project is sitting. So these are group attached. This is one of the ones that we have set up for this demo on Amazon here. And we can see that we pull out the stats. So if this is what my application is reliant on, I want to know, right, quickly, how is it doing? Are there any problems I need to be aware of? We have an app catalog that helps set up very easily using Helm charts, adding things like ingress for control of the ingress. Cert manager. Prometheus monitoring, GitLab runner, and some other things that we won't cover here, but we do have other apps and more coming. And from this perspective, it's really just setting up the credentials. But if I wanted to go and add a new one and have GitLab talk to EKS and do the creation on your behalf, that's also very simple. With the credentials set up ahead of time, as a development team, I can go create what I need myself, doing all the different configurations, and then having GitLab run, set it up, attach it to the project so you're ready to go. Now, what does ready to go mean? So let's say that I'm a developer and I've got some work that I want to do. I might start at the issue boards where I have a work item that I'm supposed to be taking care of. Maybe that I'll grab. We have issues. That's part of the end-to-end piece. Work items, what we call issues. And we can have lots of information in there, graphics, etc. So in this scenario, I had some logic. I got it out there, but I forgot the default page. Pretty ugly. Simple thing to fix. So from here, the issue is where we can have a discussion around what needs to be fixed, what needs to be worked on. But then I can say, create the merge request when I'm ready to work. When we've had our collaboration and we understand what needs to be done, I can very simply move to a state of working on it. And what you see here is the merge request got set up, the branch got created and attached, and this is also automatically connected to the issue, of course, so that we have traceability between the branch and the MR and the issue that we're working on. And then from here, I could go into my web IDE and I could do my editing. Or it's just Git, so you can go to your favorite IDE. As long as you're talking Git and pushing back to this branch, it'll pick up all the changes and integrate it in. So what I'm going to do from this point is kind of do a little bit demo cake to switch over to one that we've already run through. Same project, I just ran it through earlier so that we don't have to sit and wait for things to happen. And what you can see is what's added on after it's run is it's created a pipeline. And why it did that is because I made a change, which is also captured down here conveniently. So I can see what has been changed. Here I made a change so we could trigger a vulnerability. But the most part, I changed the background color, added, changed the text, added a logo, etc. And that's here, the pipelines, commits, the discussions, so we can talk about the work as we do it. And that kicked off a pipeline, which we'll take a look at. And that's really where the meat of this is. Oops. Excuse me. And so this pipeline that we're looking at is the out-of-the-box DevOps pipeline with maybe a little challenge. And what it's doing is taking our code. It's starting out with the build process by figuring out what is our code, how to build it. It's using Heroku-ish build packs for that. And then it's going to put a code into a container. It's going to upload that image into our registry, which is part of GitLab, or you can use ECR or any other registry. And then it's going to kick off a series of tests. 6 tests here. Code quality, where it's going to use code climate to check the quality of the code, syntax and highlighting, etc. It's going to do container scanning using Claire. We'll ignore the fact that this one had a little problem. And when it does that, it's going to be looking at the application environment for known vulnerabilities. It's also then going to do some dependency scanning, where it's going to look at all of the dependencies of your software, the whole tree, and look for vulnerabilities in those and report back. And then it's going to do license at the same time, I should say. It's going to do license management scanning, so license compliance scanning, where what it's doing is it's looking at all of your dependencies and figuring out what licenses they are requiring. Because you may be accidentally or unintentionally adopting a license that doesn't match your business plans, right? An open source one, for example, that requires you to give away software if that's not what you want to do. Then we do static application security testing to look for known vulnerability signatures in the code. We'll run the unit tests of the developers or any other tests they've defined. And then this is where some of that deep Kubernetes integration happens. We set up what's called a review app. Now, keeping in mind, this is on a change that has been pushed back, but it hasn't been merged into the main branch yet, the default branch. And what we're doing is we're setting up a live running environment with your application, with the change. It's going to spin up the namespace, spin up the piece of in the cluster, the networking, the DNS, the TLS certs. It's going to get everything set up and running so that you can click on a link as a developer and you can go see your code running live. Better yet, it's not just you can see it. Remember that everyone can contribute. It means you can have a code review or a review with your business, your customers, your UX team, right? Because now that change you made is available live without any effort. And the other thing that does is that gives us the ability to run dynamic application security testing. So we're going to go hit the now live running app with your change. And we're going to look for vulnerabilities that you can't find by looking at code. Maybe there's a configuration error that gives somebody a little bit too much access into the application. And then performance. Because we have a live running app again, we'll run site speed IO. That's going to baseline on the first install, and it's going to continue to check it. So we're going to be able to tell you things like, hey, that code change you just made, it just increased the slowed down the user experience by 10%, right? So that's all good information to have. And I want to point out, I almost forgot to mention, this is not just a template that says, hey, we suggest you run these things, right? You don't have to go get these scanners and put them in place, install them, integrate them to have all this. This is out of the box with pretty much zero effort. So all that data, because that's a lot of data, is going to come back to our merge request. And the merge request is going to keep updating itself with the latest pipeline and the pipeline details. I can get directly to pieces of it and interact with it and get more. I can get right to the code, or to the logs rather. But also the output, like the code quality scan, the security vulnerability scans. And see here, we found one vulnerability, that one that I added. So right from here, I can go dig down and understand more about what did I do? What do I need to fix? We're empowering the developer to fix the problems as early as possible, giving them the information, giving them access to the files and the details. They can create an issue so that it's something that's tracked that we know we need to deal with later. If an issue is created in the project already by someone else or by a previous scan, this will let them see that, so there's collaboration there. They can dismiss the issue and give it a comment, because what's going to happen with the dismissed issue is we're not shuffling it under the carpet. We're actually going to report that up higher to the next level, to the team dashboard. And then we're going to report that up again if it escapes the team dashboard up to the security administrator dashboard. So you're going to be able to see a whole view of everything below in the project and the group, and make sure that things that shouldn't be getting by don't get by. So we're also going to get a report on our licenses, as I mentioned. We didn't detect any new licenses here. We made a simple code change. But we can also see the full report. And this is actually part of, here's the demo guides. There we go. Where it's going to give me the different licenses. And if I have my policy set, which right here, if I have the permissions to set that policy, then I can set that ahead of time as maybe the team lead or the manager or the compliance folks, so that those get flagged. So for example, if we had set this guy as OK and this guy is not OK, right, we would see that immediately. So what that means is as soon as I build my code, right away I know if I've added a line of code, a library, or some other piece of software that I shouldn't have, because it's against our policy. And then going back from there, we've come through all the tests. Let's say that, OK, so now we've looked at everything, and we're good, let's say. We do have approvals in here, right here. I'm not going to go into that just because there's a lot of depth there that we can cover another time. But you can do full approval roles for security and for different teams, code owners, and whether or not they approve of the merge happening. So again, we can stop the code that's not wanted before it even gets into our main branch. But if I approve it and I merge it, as I've done on this one, it's going to kick off the release pipeline, which might still be running. And that release pipeline looks almost the same, because I'm going to go ahead and kick that off. Because we're going to do the same tests to make sure that we don't miss anything that changed between our last test and the time that we deploy. And then we're going to do some DAST validation as well, and then send it to a staging environment. Now that's because we're set that way. A single configuration file or configuration change in the UI will allow us to say, oh, you know what, I trust my pipeline, let's send it straight through to production after every run. But most folks will use it in this mode. And so it'll go to staging and wait for someone to take a look and validate it and give it a manual rollout. We have out of the box built in the incremental rollout. We also have Canary. If you turn that bit on, then you can do canaries, and then the monitoring will automatically show you the difference between those two. So that's great and all. We can deploy things. But it's not just about deploying it. You can see we have a lot of operational type things. Here's progressive feature flags and serverless and whatnot for progressive delivery. But we're going to focus right now on the environment part. And what my environment screen shows me is for this project, what are the environments that I've deployed it to? What is actually in them? What resources am I using? So we can see I have production and staging showing here. Right here, I can see I've deployed my app into 3 pods because I set that earlier to say, okay, when I go to production, I want my app across 3 pods. I can scale that. I can also get directly to the pod logs if I need to do troubleshooting. And I can also get a shell into one of the containers. Again, this is not how you make production changes, but this is how you might look and say, well, did that lay out the way that I expect it? Or why does that file say it's missing? All right. So you can go take a look at that and troubleshoot. I can get straight to the app the change that we made and deployed. So I can validate what's there. But I can also go look at a full history so that I understand what's changed over time. Not a lot here, but we can see what I've rolled out, and I can get directly to that change, and I can roll back if I need to. And then finally, because DevOps is not just about creating software and putting it on servers, it's also about understanding what happens once it hits the wild, once users are using it. We need to monitor it. And so that is also out of the box. We use Prometheus for that. And there's some default graphs and the data that we track, and you can supplement it with your own. You can add your own. Excuse me. But we can see there's not a whole lot of data here, but we can see that we're starting to track information about our application, our throughput and latency, our error rate, which looks pretty decent here, and then some other things we don't have data for right now, but we also have the underlying infrastructure. So we know what pods you're sitting on, so we're going to tell you, here's the status of your pods. Also the underlying cluster information. And here's the piece, if we had the canary up, you would automatically see that here as well. And the last thing I want to point out is we've got here this launch. This is a deploy point. So if I see that I've got a spike at this point, or I see strange behavior in my monitoring, we've also got the points at which we've deployed overlaid. So that means I can go to that. If I can find, yeah, that means I can go to that. And I can get from there straight to the change that actually was deployed at that point. And I can see who deployed it. I can see when it was done. This is great. We've automatically linked it so you have access to the problem you were solving. Why did we make this change? You also have access to the MR, which is where the work was going on. So what was the discussion? What were the problems that people were hitting up against, and maybe the doubts that they had about the software? All of that is available, including the pipeline and all the information that was collected from that, as well as the change itself. So that's pretty cool. That means out of the box, I have a complete feedback loop, as well as traceability from one end to the other of the spectrum. That is a complete DevOps platform as a single application, and that is GitLab. So with that, so thank you for spending an extra little bit. Appreciate it. We're at booth 1620, right down this way. If you want to hear more, see more, collect some cool swag, and thank you for coming.